is going on, Secondhand Talent family? It is Steiner here, and we are here with the first episode of season 4 of Secondhand Talent, the podcast, with a two-part special with the incredible one and only Ron Bruner Sr. Ron, thank you so much for being on the show.
And I'm doing it for free.
Which is even more gracious. Now, folks, if you're just listening and not watching on YouTube, I've got a little something to say here. Ron Bruner Sr. is a native of Compton, California, and he's one of the most notable freelance drummers in the LA scene. He has over 40 years of live session and studio drumming and has played and or recorded with The Temptations, Gladys Knight, The Supremes, jazzer Gary Bartz, and Diana Ross, just to name a few. Ron started the Miles Davis 70s tribute band Strange Jazz Universe about 17 years ago with the understanding music is ever evolving, something Miles taught us and that Ron carries with him. Ron also had his band Chameleon, a disco fusion group who dropped a record on Elektra in 1979 that was produced by longtime James Brown trombonist Fred Wesley. He's the quintessential veteran of the scene who turned his focus toward the future. His three sons, Ron Jr., Steven, also known as Thundercat, and Jamil, are now each award-acclaimed musicians in their own rights. Without further ado, Ron, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you.
Ta-da!
Snag my notes back there, but seriously, it is an incredible pleasure to have you on the show. And folks might be wondering, where does this fit into secondhand talent? And we'll get into that down the line. But first, as always, got to start with our starter question. When we had first gotten in contact and I had approached you and said, "Hey, I've got this podcast called Secondhand Talent." What was your initial reaction as to what secondhand talent could mean?
Well, it's catchy, number one, you
Oh,
know,
thank you.
and it's a marketing ploy, and I get that. And I found it interesting. It's so the title itself takes away from the let's say the Hollywood what's that show that comes on where they do artists and what have you. They talk about them on the talk show. It's a talk show. It's a I'll think of it, but it's what is the name of that show? It's here in LA. TMZ.
Okay, all right.
Shows like that, TMZ, and there's a couple other ones that are kind of like that. So it takes away from that. It's like, okay, this is something we're doing that, but this is not in the light of that. Does that make sense?
I
That's
think so. What I love about this question so much is that I never get the same answer twice. And, at the time of this taping, 70 some odd interviews in, it's a different answer every time. But if I'm getting the gist of it, it's kind of that, it's the same scope of personality,
yeah,
just not the
the glitz factor.
the A-listers that
Right.
people would expect, the boom, this person. Not to say we haven't had some fantabulous guests on the show, but I believe that's kind of what you're referencing if
It's
I'm reading it right.
more of a casual. If we had coffee, we'd be drinking it kind of vibe, as we do this. So yeah, I get it. I totally get it. And so my reaction to it was, well, like I said, let's do it. I said that at the beginning.
Yeah, and then I just out of sheer personal curiosity, once you listened to it and got a little bit of an understanding of kind of what the meaning was, what did you have a second take on it?
Second take. Well, I listened to particularly the one with the lady who Jerry Garcia was the who gave her away to be married.
Susanna Millman. Yeah, check out last season 3, episode 23, Songs of Our Own.
It was so comfortable. I mean, you asked questions, she just talked. Now, I guess apparently you knew her prior. I'm guessing.
No, it was actually a recent connection, just like this one. It was actually something that was put together fairly quickly, and she's an absolutely wonderful person. And just like you and I, we had one chat prior to the interview, and then just went ahead and did it. And I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm impressed. you know, but But no, that was really yeah. So the whole modality that you're using to conduct these interviews, based upon her specifically, is like this is really relaxed. It's casual. It's actual.
Hmm.
Isn't doesn't
That's
yeah. Go ahead.
well, actual. That's, I mean, that's kind of what I mean. These are real people who I interview, and they do real hard work to make sure that a lot of folks have a real good time. And, it's important to highlight, not just Susanna, but every photographer, man or woman, in
Yeah,
the industry that works that hard. And that's
yeah,
one of the things I really hope to aim for with the show.
yeah. The actual unsung heroes.
Yeah, really, as we like to say, that we shine the spotlight on the people who shine the spotlights. I mean, I know as a comedian, I'm always the least hardest working person in the room, and I thank everybody else. And it would be nice if one or two others say thank you as well. Be kind to the people who are working hard to make sure that you're comfortable and having fun.
Amen to that.
So we would be remiss not to start with bit of your illustrious career. And we mentioned in the intro a few of the great artists you've performed with. But what I'm a little bit more curious about, certainly, your sons, and we'll get to that in part two of this interview, grew up, with music around them. I'm curious if it was the same
I,
for yourself.
I blame my sons on my wife, so we'll talk about that later. But, but we'll talk about that later. Go carry on, sir. Carry on. Carry on.
Well, I was just saying, I'm curious to know that, in your upbringing, did you experience musical, or music surrounding you, or musicality as a part of, your daily life, or was it something you picked up individually?
Well, the case is this. I grew up in Compton. I lived in a corner house, the corner of 118th Street and Wilmington. On the south side of the street was a hot dog stand with a jukebox outdoors. Back in the day, they did that.
Hmm.
And then on the that would be the southeast corner was the Baptist church. So the jukebox and one other thing, where the jukebox was, the hot dog stand, the house behind it, they owned the hot dog stand, but they had a group, an R&B group. Now the group was called the Handicappers. I'm painting you a picture here. They were called the Handicappers. The reason they were called the Handicappers is because everyone in the band dealt with a handicap. But they were an R&B band, and they rehearsed in the patio behind the house. So now, so on pretty much 3 or 4 nights a week, there's an R&B band rehearsing behind the house there. Most of the day, the afternoon, the jukebox is blasting all day, all day. And it's facing my house. And then on Thursday nights, sometimes Tuesdays and Thursday nights, the gospel choir will be practicing in church over there. So I could sit on my porch, basically, and listen to the top 40 for the day coming out of there. Then come back out on the porch later at night. The R&B band, they're
Yeah.
practicing. And then on Tuesday and Thursday nights, I'm listening to a gospel choir, just sitting on my porch. So that kind, it's music attracted. I know there's a gifting there for me in my talent, music. But that's how I was initially fed.
Mhm.
And my parents, to my knowledge, my mother was not a musician. I didn't find well funny. It's funny to me now, but my 32nd birthday, I found out my father wasn't my father, but he died when I was 9. So there's a possibility that on the man who sired me, he was from New Orleans, I gather. He may have been a musician.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I didn't find it out till age 32. But I was drawn to music early age, and then here's 3 sources right in my neighborhood, and just out loud.
So you almost had, osmosis by proxy, basically, for not just one genre of music, but we're talking, as you mentioned, you have top 40 gospel, which I love, and you have that mediated out by an R&B band that's full of folks who are just incredible.
Yeah,
And I mean, you can't help but soak that in.
Yeah. And so then my father, what he would buy me, because I would beat on the furniture, age 5, age 6, age 7. So he bought me a, they back then the toy drum sets, they were made out of, there was a paper that was, they were made out of. And so he would buy me one maybe like once a month because I'd beat right through it, tear it up. And so then, but then after he passed away, as I got older, somewhere around, I'm gonna say the 6th grade, the Jeffrey Neal was his name. He was the guitarist for that R&B band. And so he would be during the daylight hours, he'd be over there by himself playing Hendrix, Cream, all the stuff of the 60s, late 60s. And
Oh yeah,
I'd be on the porch like, I know that song. I know. And I would ask my mother, could I go over there? But she had a problem with me going over where musicians were because of the stigma and things like that.
sure.
There was one, this happened during one summer. So I begged, please, Mom, please, please, please. Okay, you can only stay over there 30 minutes. Okay, Mom, okay, okay. I went over there and they knew me. They knew the little kid on the corner that played drums. They knew that. But I went over there and Jeffrey's in there. He had one of those custom amps, tuck and roll custom amps, right? He had a Fender. It was a Jazz Master guitar, and he actually was he was wheelchair bound. So he's going through the riffs. He's playing Hendrix. I'm just standing in the doorway. My mouth is just drooling. He saw me. He said, Ronnie. I said, hey, Jeff. And so you want to play? Yeah, so we sat down and we jammed like it might have been Foxy Lady or something like that. We just started jamming. And that was kind of my first time playing with another live musician,
Yeah.
and so then
How'd that feel to get invited by these people who you had kind of grown up watching to have them invite you to be like, hey, come sit in with us and join us in this musical experience?
I was so excited. I
Mm,
mean, I can't tell you what I was thinking at the time.
sure.
Come come on, you want to play? I just ran for the drum set and just these sticks work. I just started going. We just started going. And so during that summer, my mother, I went up there kind of like maybe every day,
Mm,
at least maybe 3 or 4 days, and we're literally going down the 60s rock catalog, of tunes. The band was an R&B band, but Jeffrey was a rocker. He always aspired to be a rock musician. And so that's kind of where I started. That's where I started. I was a rocker. I wanted to grow up and play with Jimi Hendrix, but I was in 9th grade and he dies, and darn it, That's where I started though.
so you're in high school and you want to be a rocker. Were you playing in bands actively throughout high school?
No, high school, my senior year, that we formed an R&B band,
Mm,
and the band was called Roscoe.
mm.
And we played like school functions, talent shows. One of the saxophone player's father kind of acted as a manager for us, so he got us to play some Catalina cruise boats in the harbor, things like that. So that was probably the first kind of real band commitment that I had. Was around, yeah, I was 11th grade. It was the summer of '73. Yeah, the summer of '73 we started that band. And we played Tower Power, we played Mandrill, we played funk and R&B of the day, you know. And we practiced every day. We didn't have nothing else to do. We go to Reggie Barrett's garage and we just play all day. And so that was my first experience being in a dedicated band situation. Again, now I didn't have a lot of lessons and so forth. I just just went after it. I would imitate what I saw on television. I would play air drums along with Keith Moon and whoever was on TV on the Ed Sullivan Show, that kind of a thing. Technique, I didn't have. My mother took me to the Eubanks School of Music, which was in Compton, but we only went maybe for 2 lessons. And my mother, not being a musician, she stopped the lessons because she says, you're not learning anything. Well, what do you mean? All you're doing is right, left, right, left, right. Every lesson, that's what you're doing. I said, well, I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know that right, left. I'm developing a double stroke roll. But I didn't have that, the teacher, I'm just doing what he told me to do. Practice this and come back next week.
Right, right.
So she took me out of lessons, so I didn't really get a chance to have or to experience, lessons at an early age. It was just raw. If I saw you play and I saw something I like, I'd steal it and make it mine.
I mean,
That,
but that's great. I mean, like, I recall, and it's something that you and I had discussed the first time we spoke. I look up to my two of my brothers who are musicians and my two cousins, and my two cousins, Moon City Masters, shout out Jordan and Taylor. They were on American Idol. They've toured Europe. They've done all sorts of crazy things. And my brothers Ben and Mayor, shout out you guys. I would put them, musicality caliber wise on par with them. And there was really on my cousin's side, and no fault to it, but they had a lot of support in the sense of their parents helping putting them into a position, whereas my siblings kind of like you, just, music lessons weren't a thing in our family. My dad played guitar, my mom is very musical, but that wasn't the way we grew up. And one day my brother, we were at my uncle's house and he just kind of picked up the sticks. And from then on, now he can pick up just about any instrument and play it. And I think that to be able to be removed from a lesson situation, right? Where you don't have the context or the foundation to understand what you're learning, right?
right,
Because you haven't learned what you're learning yet,
right, right.
right? To be removed from that, but to be able to retain the love for it, I
Yeah,
think is admirable and something worth noting. And that regard, because some people when they get pulled from lessons for something, that's it.
yeah, that's true. That happens. That's yeah. I only had two. you know,
Well, but
yeah,
that could be a discouraging factor in a lot of cases, and I think it's really important to put out the message that like just because you're not, you know, even if you get pulled after a couple of lessons, that doesn't mean you're not good at what you were taking lessons for, right?
correct. Yeah, I didn't have that feeling at all because I didn't. It's kind of like just I had no knowledge of why I'm here, and I'm doing what the man tells me to do, and then she decides, okay, no more of that. Oh, okay. I had
Mhm.
no way to gauge it. I was young. I was probably how old was I? Probably I was in the fifth or sixth grade. I would gather 10 or 11 years old. And they didn't see it. Here's the deal: I go home. There's my drum set. I go bang on
And then in the meantime, you're integrating with this band. At the end of high school, you have this band that's playing events. And then what was it that sort of kind of brought you to the next level in your musicianship where, you kind of mentioned, lack of whatever, let's call it theory or any given thing like that, stuff you would learn in a book, right? But you had experience and you had the love and the passion for it. So, obviously the high school band wasn't it. What was the element that brought you to that next step of your career?
it. I have to paint the social picture as well because it was a major factor in the choices that I made.
Please.
My senior high school year, actually, it began in the 10th grade. It began in the freshman year. But the Compton gang banging scenario, that it just grew and grew and grew, and you're literally going to high school hoping you don't get jumped, hoping you don't get robbed, hoping you don't get, I mean, it was bad. And the neighborhood I lived in, all the guys that grew up in that neighborhood, not everyone, but there was a contingency of those that chose to go the gang banging route. These are friends of mine. And so, the drive-by shootings and all those kinds of things, I began to become concerned for my life. So, senior year, we're heading toward graduation, and so they're of course encouraging us to go to school, go to higher learning.
Sure,
And so,
sure.
I discovered there's a thing called a music major. And
Ah,
okay, and now mind you, I played in the high school marching band.
We
Okay.
left that out. We left that out. Was that all of high school that you were in the marching band, or was that only
Yeah.
later
Yeah.
on before the
It was
all of
a
high school?
yeah, all of high school's 10th, 11th, 12th grade. I was in the
All
marching.
right.
In the ninth grade, in the concert band, I wound
Hmm.
up sousaphone, tuba. You know, I was the best. All the drummers were kind of alike, but I was the best natural talent one. I was the best. So we played through something, then I'd hear it, then I'd be able to spit it back out and memorize it, whatever. So I was talking to the band director, like I wanted to play another instrument. I want like, I want to do something else because you got 4 or 5 drummers over here, and I want to do something else. So we can always use another tuba player. And so he pointed to the sousaphone. And so he said, you can take it home, practice this, whatever. So I did. And so I became the sousaphone player in the band in ninth grade. Entering high school, I wanted to be in the drum line. But once the band director finds out you do something else other than play drums, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
we need another tuba player. Oh, yeah, sousaphone. I don't want to play that. The sousaphone. You want to be in the band? Okay.
Like
I
the
did it.
tall guy who doesn't play basketball and the coach is just following around going, "Hey man, you're 6'6". Let's go. Let's go. You're a 6'6" freshman. We need you in the locker room. Let's go." Yesterday.
Here's your shorts right now. Here, put
Yeah.
them on. That's what it was, man. So I did that, but the R&B, the band thing, that was something I did. So we did that on the weekends and what have you. Now, now I'm concerned for my life, basically the neighborhood that I lived in. So I decided to be a music major, and so I was going to go to Florida A&M because they had a fantastic marching band. And so the day came when I sat down with the college counselor. So what do you want? Where do you want to go? I said, well, I want to be a music major and I want to go to Florida A&M. Well, what's your career goal? Well, I want to play in bands and do recording sessions and do this and that and the other. And she says, well, why are you going to Florida? I said, well, they've got a really great marching band, well, wait a minute. All the recording studios are here in Hollywood, right over there. No one ever said that to me, right? So, oh, yeah, you're right. So she said, why don't you go to some place like Cal State Northridge, which is in the San Fernando Valley? And that way you go to school and then you have time to come and hang out in Hollywood and do this and go home. And I said, okay. So
Yeah.
that made sense, And so I applied. They accepted me, but I was totally unprepared for a music major. I couldn't read.
Mm.
you know, um, you had people that were major. You had tuba majors. I had to play alongside of tuba majors.
You were hooked on a feeling. They were hooked on a GPA.
That,
Yeah.
you So again, I'm not a good reader at all, not really. And so we played through a phrase once or twice. I got it memorized, you know. But now, so I auditioned. You had to do an audition. I was totally unprepared for that. By the grace of God, the percussion instructor, the head guy, he asked me, what school did you go to? Who'd you study with? What have you prepared for me? Sir, I didn't even know I was supposed to prepare anything. I had no idea what to expect coming here. I'm just trying to escape the neighborhood. So he said, go over to that snare drum there and pick up the six stairs and read that thing that's on the stand there. I walked up to it, man. I looked at it. I don't know what that says. And I said, we're at college level now. So he's looking at me like, huh. He paused for about maybe a good 5 to 8 seconds. He said, I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to let you in. But you're going to have to work real hard. I said, his name was Mr. Leach. I said, thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. I still don't have a clue of what I'm getting myself into.
But
So
did you play anything for him?
I
Or
just picked sticks up and hit,
just
and
if and he just on a
he
we
could
don't
see.
know what
He
he
could see. I don't know what I'm doing. He could see that.
and he still said, you know what? He must have seen something.
I would gather that. I would gather that. But that's why I use the term by the grace of
Mm,
God.
mm, mm.
And so, he let me in. I signed up for all the beginning courses, theory 101, piano 101, all the things I was supposed to do. And then I had to take lessons, percussion lessons. So we're talking about studying mallets, vibraphone, marimba, and all that mess, and timpani and all that kind of stuff. And so I got a teacher, and I don't want to say, I want to be careful. The first year was very depressing for me, but I stuck it out. I stuck it out. First year was very depressing. I'm very thankful to be taking piano lessons. So piano 101, basically you're learning piano. I was grateful for that. It's okay. This is okay. Because they're treating everybody in here. Just your piano's not your major instrument. It's something you're doing in addition to what you do because you're going to be a teacher. you know. So that
But
was
for
good.
you, it was something where you're able to start to build a foundation.
There you go. There you exactly. Exactly. So that happened. Only band so you have to be in a performing ensemble. So during fall it's either concert, it's marching band or symphony. I didn't qualify for symphony whatsoever. So marching band, I could fake the tuba. you know, like
Right. That fuba.
okay, so I did that. I wasn't that well liked, because this guy can't play. Why is he in here with us? I'm looking at them like your mother. you know. So finally, one tubaist, if you would, his name was Dan Cagle, very nice guy, and he sitting next to me. So he says on break, he says to me, "So Ron, if you like, man, you and I, we can get together, and I'd be happy to sit with you in the practice room. We can go over some of these parts because there's like five concert tuba players here. These guys are actually majors. I'm, I'm just skating through it."
Right.
So then he says to me, "Who is your teacher?" I said, "I don't have a tuba teacher." "You don't have a tuba teacher?" "I'm a percussion major." So then he looks down the row at the other guys. Obviously, they've been talking about me and complaining. He looks down the row at them. He says, "He's a percussion major. He's not a tuba major." And they all went, "Oh, okay, so this is a secondary thing for you." Talk about dodging a bullet.
Well, at least they had the grace to be like, at least we get it. That's a huge weight off your shoulder for them to be like, oh,
And
all of a sudden it clicked for them that it's like, oh, let's ease it up a little bit. He's not one of us. Like,
but we'd be glad you chose our instrument to be your
yeah,
second thing.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
yeah. So okay, we're getting along. I remember. Now this is college experience. The thing that got me to going in the direction that I did. So one afternoon during my first semester at Northridge, I heard jazz. And so I followed the sound of it to a rehearsal room, and there was this big old jazz band, which I had never seen one of these. I'd never stood in front of a big band. Never just, they weren't playing that on top 40 radio.
Mm.
I stood there blown away. Um, and I'm looking at the drummer. His name escapes me at the moment, but I'm looking at the drummer, and he's actually reading paper. And he's not just reading it. I mean, he's all inside of it. He's like, burning. I'm shocked, jaw dropped. I'm looking, and so when they finally finished, I think that was maybe their last of two songs. I walked up to him, just said hi. I introduced myself, and I said, "Man, your playing was really great." I said, "Was all of that on the paper?" And he laughed, and then he says, "Well, no, not all of it. I'm improvising. I'm reading the paper, but I'm improvising." Foreign, I can't even explain how the first sight of seeing that happened.
Revelatory.
Oh yeah. So this appealed to me. Yeah, I want this, but they didn't have jazz instruction in college in those days. All the major colleges had big bands, and you can audition if you could play jazz, and if you can read and solo, you can be in the band. But they didn't teach that there. So I finished out the first year. Second year, I wound up getting a roommate in the college dorm, and a brother named his name was Ray Brown. We found out our mothers grew up in Tyler, Texas, and knew each other.
Mm.
And so Ray came from a high school program that had a very big. He came from a high school, Locke High School. I'll shout out to Reggie Andrews, who is now deceased. But he had the #1 reputation in Southern Los Angeles of getting kids from the garage to the stage. And so he came out of that school. And when he came to be my roommate, he had just come off touring with a group over in Europe. And I'm like, how'd you, where, who, how, who, how?
Who
You know,
is this man's and how did he do this?
you same age I am. What the? And so in the process of time, I got an understanding of, okay, how that happened. And so then he asked me, he says, well, so you want to be a drummer, right? He said, well, what are you doing playing? This is my second year of school. What are you doing playing tuba? Well, I told him, I said, I can't read. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do that. And he's like, you need to study with basically a drum instructor, a drum set instructor. So he made it his business. He found me an instructor, a gentleman by the name of Billy Moore here in Los Angeles. And Billy Moore played with old school, Earl Bostic, Ray Charles. He was, he was. I think he's deceased now, but so he gave me the phone number. I made the connection. I decided I'm going to take lessons from you. So he was a Southern gentleman, and so he says, Mr. Bruner, how can I help you? And I basically kind of started crying. I go to Cal State Northridge. I'm studying this. I can't do this. I take lessons with this guy. I don't want to think it was a racist issue. I won't play that card. But I can't. I believe the teacher that I had honestly didn't know what I needed, and I couldn't express it to him. He would just say,
Again, I was just gonna say it gets back to not having that foundation, that we were talking about earlier, and you utilizing what means you had up until that point to create that foundation. But, you
right,
know, ultimately there comes a time when push comes to shove.
yeah, yeah. And so I'm crying on Mr. Moore's shoulder, basically. And so he literally, like a good father would do. Okay, now, okay, Ron, okay. We're gonna get you going. We're gonna get you squared away. And so he taught me mallets, but he answered the questions that this other gentleman wouldn't. But again, I don't think the other gentleman understood what I was lacking. So okay, at least now I know what I'm doing, what I'm reaching for. The drum set he put me in, there was a couple of books. He had a book that he wrote, and there was a couple of books. There was a book called Ted Reed's Syncopation, which is kind of the jazz drummer's Bible to this day. And it teaches you big band phrasing, how to read it. There it is. And so through the process of that, I'm learning to read. I can actually follow a chart now. So I actually, in my third year, so the spring of my second year, I auditioned for a jazz band.
Hmm.
So they created a D band. They had so many students that wanted to play jazz, but everybody's not good enough to play the A, B, or C band, so they created a D band. Well, of course, I made D band. I'm excited. I'm in a jazz band in school. And let's say I'm in there, and I can actually follow the chart. I'm playing. I'm actually reading it. It's again the joy, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So then, what wound up happening? My drum room roommate, who played in the B band, got bumped down to the C band. But it was a political move by some other situation, some other. I'm not going to get into that. So he drops out of the C band. Guess what? I get promoted to C band. So I'm getting good at this thing, right? So now my roommate he came from LA one afternoon, came in and he said, so hey, I got you a gig. I said, really? With who? The Temptations. I said, what? The Temptations. So he worked in what was called the Scripps House. And what he did for extra money, he did music copying. So the conductor for the Temptations, anytime he would write new arrangements for songs or whatever, he would give it to the Scripps House and they would copy it out. So his name was Benjamin Wright. And Ben Wright, he's a whole nother story. He's a great guy. Love him to this day. Ben Wright called the Scripps House asking, I think his name was Manny. No, Marion. Marion was his name. When are my arrangements going to be due? And Marion is answering the question. My roommate is overhearing the conversation. So then Ben asked him, says, I need a drummer. My drummer is going to be gone for 3 weeks. I need a sub. I need somebody that can play and read. And so Marion says, well, man, I don't know any drummers. So my roommate just spoke up. My roommate plays drums and he can read. And so he gave the phone to my roommate. My roommate took Ben's number and all that. So he comes. So he hands me the phone number, his name, music director's number, call him. So I called him and said, oh, yeah, you the guy recommended by Marion Sherrill. Yeah, that's me. All right. Here's my address. Come up to my house tomorrow. Now, he lived in Placentia, which is right next door to Northridge. So I drove over there. I took my materials, my learning books, just so you can see that I'm actually studying.
Sure. Yeah. Like I got the chops. Yeah. Yeah.
So I knock on the door. He opens the door. So, Mr. Bruner. And then he says, what you bring all that for? Well, I thought you might want to know I'm studying, he uses expletives that I can't use.
You sure? You certainly can if you choose, but
I'm going to avoid that.
fair enough.
But basically, he was man. If so and so says you can play, you can play. So he hands me the book, the Temptations drum book, and a cassette tape. He says, "I'll see you on a plane on Thursday." It was Tuesday, I believe it was like Monday or Tuesday. So okay, the plane leaves on so and so, and the manager called me on like Wednesday to make sure I go to my apartment. I'm elated. I'm gonna play with the Temptations, and here's the cassette tape. I put the tape in, and I'm following the charts. I know where I am. This is something I can actually do.
What a feeling.
Oh man. It's like I could be president,
I mean, for those people, for those of us who are listening, for those viewers or listeners, for those people listening and not watching, the look on my face has just been one of just dumbstruck. Like how like how did it feel? Like, to be handed all of a sudden your hand. First of all, if somebody says you can play, you can play. That in and of itself is and that's the truth.
Yeah.
But that we'll get to that later. But to be handed the Temptations songbook and like what kind of like that's a forget a step up. That's a you know
Yeah. Yeah.
small step for mankind, a massive step for you.
Right. um, so I basically shedded the charts, those 2 or 3 days, and I packed up my little suitcase and whatever, and I think they rented drums. I believe. Yeah. And so we played up at the Circle Star Theater in up in Northern California. And that was one gig. We did 3 weekends. The other we did 3 weekends. Geez. Anyway, and I was making $400 a week. And it's okay. I don't pay no rent. I'm living with my mother. And that's the most money I ever got in life.
Sure.
So I show up. I get back to school. 3 weeks is about as long as you can go without missing a lot of work and all that kind of stuff. Before you get in trouble.
Mm.
Came back to school. I bought a new stick bag. Bought some sticks. Got a couple of new cymbals. And one of the gentlemen, whose name I won't mention, one of the gentlemen who was one of the percussion majors there, one of the A band drummers, knocks on the door. And so he says, so you were on the road these last 3 weeks? Yeah. You were playing the Temptations? I said, yeah. Then he goes, how did you get that gig? But very sarcastically, and walked away. I just looked down the hallway and just laughed. What you're trying to build toward, I just jumped over you. Playing in the A band ain't about nothing to me right now.
Let's go. Yes.
College jazz band doesn't mean squat.
Yeah, I mean, how much like realistically, so then you get back off tour with the Temptations and you're back at school. How long does that last before you realize like, you know what? Like live music is it?
Yeah, well, so that was spring. I finished the spring semester. And so I'm back at school in the fall of what year are we at now? We're in fall of 76. I'm back at school. And so June of 77. Now, mind you, I'm doing little gigs and stuff, I'm getting gas money and getting burger money. I'm doing little gigs around town, not a lot, but just getting into the playing with bands thing. And I can read. A lot of situations they'd have charge. You read, yeah, okay, here, cool, So June of 77, I get a call from Ben Wright, the MD for the Temptations, and he says, so look, Bruner, Mel Brown just retired. The drum chair is yours if you want it. So I took my last final on a Wednesday. Thursday morning, I was on the road for a year. I spent a year traveling with the Temptations. That's what happened.
Like we mentioned off camera, the Temptations is part of the soundtrack of my upbringing. We had discussed, I'd gone to see Ain't Too Proud to Beg, on Broadway before my brother had gotten married, and being the youngest people in the crowd and singing that music. I mean, to be talking to someone who was playing with it for a year. That what an escape that must have felt like to take your last final on a Wednesday and hit the road on Thursday.
Exactly what happened, man. It was a wonderful experience. Just playing music, getting a decent wage, and seeing the world.
Mm.
You know, but again, now how old was I? 18, 19, somewhere around there. And I didn't even, I don't know. I'm gonna do this the rest of my life. That's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna do this the rest of my life, So I spent the year with them. I spent a month with the Supremes, but the bass player and I did not get along. Anyway, so then I was again, I come to LA. I got a kind of a gig circuit that I was on. I'm playing with locals, Oh, you in town? Okay, come, so I'm in the loop, I wanted to play with somebody that played with Miles Davis, and so I wound up getting the job with Gary Bartz. He was an alto saxophonist with Miles during the late 70s. And, that was a month-long situation. So that's kind of how I got into, that's how the transition was made. And it was initially me escaping my neighborhood so I can stay alive, throwing myself into this college situation again by the grace of God. They shouldn't have even let me in, but they did. And then the second year, meeting my roommate, who, because of his background, had all the answers. Just go do this, go do that, go talk to him, because that's what he had in high school. I wish I could have gone to Locke High School, but it didn't work out that way. So there we are. That's how that happened.
I mean, just a series of incredible events. And before we end this part of our two-part series, I just have one other question on this era. So in 1979, was it Chameleon formed?
Yeah,
What's the story behind that band?
Chameleon was a band that belonged to Azar Lawrence. He was a saxophonist. He's probably most famous for playing with McCoy Tyner, jazz pianist, and Miles Davis. He did I think it was the Agartha album. It was a live album.
Mm-hmm.
And so he, again, all these guys live in LA. So they needed a drummer. They had negotiated an audition with Elektra Records. And so a bass player friend of mine by the name of Gerald Brown, hey man, you want to do this gig? It's a record deal, la da da, boom boom boom, do 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 do. So to me, that was the next step. Being a band, original music, traveling the world, and so that happened. So I told them I'll do the audition with you with the Elektra, but I got Gary Bartz's gig, so I'll help you get the deal. But I'm not gonna stay. I'm gonna go with Gary.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the audition. They got the deal. I went with Gary. Gary's a wonderful musician, but the tour was horrible. in terms of, but it was the record label's fault. Not basically not keeping their word as they said they would. But playing with Gary was incredible. I mean, he was I'll tell you why. One thing, the first night we played together, and I think it was in Houston, Texas, at a bowling alley. It was four groups. It was Gary Bartz, Raul de Sousa, who was a Latin trombone player, Bobby Lyle, keyboardist,
mm-hmm.
and who was one other artist? Who was that? Oh, Caldera. So Gary would walk out there, everybody claps. Gary would have his little celestial circular rug put on the floor before he steps on it. And he would just call the name of the tune and fold his arms. And we're sitting there. One, two, one. I just counted it in, and we started playing.
Yeah.
So he was totally spontaneous like that, which was so that playing with him was a great musical experience. But due to how the tour was handled by the management and what have you, when I got back to LA at the end of that month, I called my friend. I called Azar. You guys still need a drummer. Oh, you want back in? Well, man,
right.
So they let me back in, and so I signed a deal with them, and because they couldn't find a drummer all that month, they couldn't find somebody. I signed the deal. We did the recording. Now this is all I can do is just tell you what happened. Nothing necessarily bad to say about Azar and all of them. But all of a sudden, cocaine became incredibly available.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly available.
It's a subject we tackle frequently on this show, how substance abuse in the industry winds its way in. But I mean, you're really talking about the beginning.
Yeah, So, and again, I'm maybe two or 2.5 years into like being a full-fledged freelance musician. Okay. And so we were doing the recording out in Malibu, at a studio in Malibu. And I won't mention, for the sake of whatever, I won't mention the producer's name. But I have all love and respect for him, and he's a wonderful man. If you know him now, he's gotten free himself. But he walked in and he brought a gator bag. And I had already done my drum. I did my drum tracks, so they were doing horn overdubs. And so he walks in, hey, Bruner, and he sits the bag in front of me, and there's a straw sticking in the bag. He said, "Make on, get as much as you want," and he walks away. And I knew at this point, that's coke. So the straw. I took one drag with the straw. I stuck the straw. It's stuck in the bag, so I just sent it out. Nostril, did the other nostril. I sat there for maybe 2 minutes, didn't feel nothing, so I did it again.
Oh.
Thing, and still nothing really happened. And then one of the band members, he walked in, and he saw the bag. Oh, what do you have there? He's a seasoned vet. What do you have there? I said, well, yeah. Where'd you get that from? Oh, I said, well, so and so sat it here. Oh, okay. Where's the razor blade?
Oh, my Lanta. Yeah. That's kind of what I was wondering.
Where's the razor blade? I don't know. Well, what are you using to cut it with? I didn't cut it. Well, how'd you get? I stuck the straw in the bag and snipped. And he goes, "You'll kill yourself." I will.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug. I mean,
oh yeah, man. And when he said that, and he walked away. Well, no, he went to go get a razor blade.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and it was a voice. It didn't come out of my head. It was a voice that said to me, "You're not going to live long." And it just shocked me. But that voice, who I later found out that was the Holy Ghost, I later found out who that was. It shocked me because I understood. I'm just as much a drug head just as anybody else. Some people live, some don't. You may OD, the chemistry and the thing gets crazy in your body and kills you. All kind of factors. You're not going to live long. Oh, that scared me. And it was shortly thereafter. Now I'm in that band. We did the recordings. And so now we're finished. And so we're waiting for it to be released. So what happened during that time, one of the musicians in the band, we had a gig playing with somebody else. We finna, we just gonna do a little hit, a little jazz hit, gonna play with somebody else. He picks me up. Excuse me. I drive to his house and get in his car, and we go to the gig. We do it, and he just starts talking Bible. He just starts talking Bible, and I'm kind of shocked because he's actually, without me saying a word to him, not without me having had any kind of prior conversation with him, he's answering every question pretty
Saying
much.
what you need to hear
Yeah,
without
exactly.
without any preface
No,
or put any question or any like prompt or anything like that. He's just speaking, and it happens to be addressing the truth that you had been seeking at the time.
that I'm chasing, literally running after, trying to figure
Mm,
this out.
mm.
So I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. We did the gig, and on the way back, he answered. He just kept talking. So we get to his house, and so he wants to pray with me. So I'm like, "Oh no, man, it's cool, it's cool. No, man, we good, we
Mm,
good, we good.
mm, mm,
Thanks,
mm,
though." And so he gave me two booklets. Uh, Both of the booklets. One booklet. It was a small. It was maybe what 15 pages. Easy read. And one had to do with Satan. The title of it escapes me, but it was a book by Kenneth Copeland, a very famous name in the ministry. But it was about Satan, and then the other one was about the end times. Like signs of the end,
mm.
what have you,
Yeah, yeah, the apocalypse and all that. Yeah.
apocalypse and all that. So, I didn't. I got home. I think I might have eaten dinner. I'm still living with my mother, and fell asleep, and I tossed all night. I could not sleep, and maybe about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up, I grabbed the books, I go sit on the back porch, and I start reading. And I got halfway through. Yeah, I was reading the one about end times specific. That's the one I was looking at. So I had read the first one about Satan, and in interest, yeah, whatever. So halfway through the one about end times. Now this is the only this all I can do is describe what happened to me.
Mm.
I realized you're going to hell. That's all I can say. No one. There's no one. This is. I'm like. I realized I'm on the wrong side of the law. I'm
And this isn't about, casting aspersions on anyone else. This is just this is you having a moment of
yes.
revelation for your own self where you're saying, you know what? I recognize the path that I'm on right now, and that's not going to lead me to anywhere productive. I mean, hopefully, if it leads me anywhere at all,
Mm,
God bless. And I mean, and
yeah,
thank God that
yeah.
those events took place because you're here with us, and I'm just as grateful, that you
Well,
were
now,
given those as
it,
well.
it gets now. So I read that. I go in the house, and my mom. I said to. I started talking about what I just read to my mother,
Mm.
and she says, "Oh, what religion you into now?" Because
Mhm. Mhm.
I was fishing. I had been fishing,
Mhm.
and what religion you in now? And I said, "No, Mama, it's about Jesus." And so I literally, man, I just started weeping. We can call it whatever we want to call it, emotional, whatever. I started weeping, and I just fell on my knees. And she says to me, "Ronald, you're being saved." And I'm like, "I am." And so, I just, Lord Jesus, come. I prayed, not an intelligent prayer, but I prayed one. And I decided, Mom, we're going to go visit his church on Sunday. My mother was probably in her early 60s. This is back in 1979, probably early 60s, 61, 62, somewhere around there. And she had a condition in her knees where her cartilage it was completely gone in her knees. She was in pain constantly, had to have a walker. I lived with her, so I knew her condition. So Sunday night, we go to this church, and it happened to be Crenshaw Christian Center. That's where it was. And we go there, and my friend Gerald was there. I didn't see he was. I think Gerald wasn't playing bass then. I don't think. Anyway, we go, And all I'm gonna say is the guy, his name was Dr. Frederick K.C. Price. He's up there preaching, and it's like you're talking to. I'm the only person in this room. You're talking directly to me. How does this man know my business? Da 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 da. So of course they give the altar call. I go. They pray for you at the altar. They sent us off to the counseling room, and so you sit down with a counselor. Brother, what'd you come in here for? I want to see Jesus. So he prayed what is called the sinner's prayer. Then he asked me, do you want anything else? I said, well, I want to be filled with the Holy Ghost, because that was one of the invitations in the prayer. So here's what was cold part about it. He opens the book up, he opened the Bible up and points to, okay, see here, this says you can have the Holy Ghost. I'm looking at it. Oh, yeah, it does say that. He says, if you ask for the Holy Ghost, the Holy Father will give them to you. Okay. He says, now when you see here, like when they received the Holy Ghost, they spoke in other tongues. I see that. So we prayed. He laid hands on me. I start speaking into language, starts coming out of my mouth. And I don't know where that's coming from, but it's coming from my spirit. Now,
Stream of consciousness.
well, you can use that term. You can use that.
That's the only way I can relate to it as a writer, as a teacher, how I instruct to just let the thoughts, let your mind loose and let everything just flow out.
Yeah. Um, you can. I'm no argument, no argument. But it shocked me.
Mm.
Full blown language just coming out. I'm listening to me. Where these? It's coming out of your spirits, right? So anyway, we said amen. We shook hands. The gentleman gave me a couple of small booklets just to follow up on the information I got. When I stood up, the craving for dope was just erased. It was gone. And it shocked me. I could feel it in my body. It was just the craving was gone. And so I turned around, looked at the guy, and I said, well, I'll never do that again. And so he said, what's that, brother? I said, never mind.
Yeah, yeah.
So I go back to the sanctuary, and they're having what they call a hallelujah moment. They have the organ and the drums is bumping, and everybody's up dancing and worshiping and all that. I sit down, but my mother, I didn't see my mother. So I'm looking around, and so I'm trying to figure out where did my mother go? She probably went to the restroom. But in her condition, she's got to have that walker, so it's going to take about 30 minutes, for her to get to the restroom. And so while the lady behind me obviously saw that I was trying to figure out where my mother went. She taps me on the shoulder, and she says, in the most church lady voice I can conjure up, oh, brother, while you were in the prayer room, Pastor prayed for your mother, and God has healed her. And then I looked to the side, man, my mother was up dancing. That is something she could not do. And so my mother she was able to walk. She died of something else, maybe 12, 13 years later. But God healed her knees. Now, all I can tell you is with those two events, getting filled with the Holy Ghost, getting delivered of drugs and alcohol, and my mama getting healed, I just fell on my knees in the church there. I said, Lord, you have my attention.
Yeah.
Now, that's what happened. That happened in there, okay, during that period of time. That was in 70, 70, 79. Yeah, spring 79. Now, only thing that I changed, again, I just stopped doing the dope and stuff. I stopped that. But now, all of a sudden, I'm uncomfortable to you guys. I did not go running my mouth about Jesus because I didn't know much. I can't answer any arguments, so I don't. All I know is I got delivered and my mama got healed. That's all I got. And that was enough to make me rethink my life. And so I wound up getting put out of the band. All of a sudden, something's wrong with the way I play. We were rehearsing, getting ready to do it. Do some gigs or whatever. Your playing is not good. And it was my friend who invited me to the church, who was the bass player. Hey man, it's not you. It's the fact that you don't do that anymore. And so they trip it, and so they wound up putting me out of bed. Now, it was a shock. It kind of hurt of course it hurt my feelings, but the remainder of that year probably was one of the best times I learned how to pray, how to ask God for things. and my wife is reminding me. I married her. I met her latter part of that year. I started playing in the church band, I think it was. Yeah, I met her, and we've been together since.
And
That's
it
44.
speaks back to 44 years.
Yes, sir.
It speaks back to that idea of foundation, that's the aspect of not knowing, but being unable to know how to ask.
Hmm.
And it's not until those answers are delivered, either experientially or divinely or in whichever way, until you can put that foundation together to formulate those questions that you had been seeking answers to, that were provided to help you illuminate that path.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so I've been walking so that path. So again, we get married. Her name is Pamela Bruner. Say hi, Pamela. That's one just a formal introduction here now. Hello. She says hello. That's her. So we get married. So now I've been to wrap that up right there. I've been able to live that out these 45 years. Mm. I'm a Jesus follower. I'm a Jesus preacher. I'm a pastor now. But I still play. It's a grace that I'm allowed. I still play. Just as yeah. I know you're going to get over to the kids at some point.
Well, we're that's coming up in the second part of this interview, coming shortly.
Okay. Well, just this past weekend, I'm not all these kids. I'm famous because I'm their dad. Okay, but everybody knows I play. And there's a group called J. Davy, LA-based group, kind of a black version of the Eurythmics, if you would.
Sure.
And I played with them. They didn't have a drummer, and so Thundercat, back then he was Stephen Bruner, but he was the bass player in their band, and I used to take him to the rehearsals. And so I dug the music, and I really liked the music. It was electronic. I think I might have shared that with you earlier. And so the leader of that duo was Brooke. Brooke would give me the disc. Mr. Bruner, Stephen says you like our music, so here's some stuff we just recorded this week. Enjoy. And I would take that stuff and shed it. I was working for Disney at the time too. Yeah, I was working for Disney. I still work for Disney. That's my musical day job. And 27 years now. And so I took the disc out, and I had a practice pad drum set. Now, see, here's the thing: all that learning, all the college experience, all that, whatever, I learned how to learn.
That's exactly what I tell my students all the time, is that school is about learning how to learn. I thank you for speaking that out. Yes. Yes.
It's the truth.
Oh, I say that phrase every day of my life. I tell my students that all the time. It's so true.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's a lifelong thing. That's the tool we use throughout the remainder of our life. You learn how to learn so that you can learn and keep growing. So through Brooks' music, through J. Davies' music, the whole electronica thing, I just embraced it, and I'm like, drummers are not supposed to play like this, but no one told you that. So,
But no one said you can't.
Yeah, no one said you can. Yeah. So I wound up playing with them for a year. The first time I played with them, they opened for Michelle Indegiacello at the Rio Theater here in LA. And about a year I played, I played with them. So now it was about almost 20 years ago. And so they got invited, the band broke up. But Brooke, the leader, and I, we've remained friends. He's the same age as my kids, but he would call me asking questions. We're friends, whatever. So he calls me up about 3 weeks ago. Mr. Bruner, we just got invited to play this gig at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Oh, really? That's nice. It was a thing that was being curated by Solange Knowles. That's Beyonce's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And she did 3 of these concerts, one in New York, she did one in Houston, and she did one here this past weekend. And it was 3 nights. It was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I think. Yeah, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And So he's telling me all this. I'm like, okay, Brooke, that's cool. We don't usually talk about playing, because he has. And so, would you play with us? I said, excuse me. Yeah, you were in the band at that time when those songs were being played. Oh, I was, wasn't I? Oh, okay. So so okay, I said I'll do it. So okay, so he sent me a song list and all that, on Spotify, so I can get back up to speed on the songs. And so then I called Steven, Thundercat. I just, we just having a father and son chat about whatever. And so I mentioned him. I said, "Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, Brooke just called me, man. I played with him at the yeah, Dad, I know. Oh, yeah, I'm on that." He says, "I'm on that gig."
That's a
Oh,
family affair.
there you go. It's like, he dig that. So we just did that. So I'm still relevant, is what I'm saying. That's what
I
I'm getting.
loved I love to hear it. And we're gonna talk more all about it next week in part two. This has been part one with Ron Bruner. Stay tuned next Wednesday, coming back with part two. So happy to be here in season four. We'll see you soon.